They rush into court, ask a court to order a president of the United States or his appointees to spend money abroad. And with zero briefing, practically speaking, and a rush timeline, not only does the district court let it happen, the Supreme Court lets it happen. Now, there's low-intensity lawfare going on in the courts as the president exercises his constitutional prerogatives as president to try to curtail and control government spending. One of the more outrageous restrictions on that effort came from a judge here in, I think it was Washington, D.C. Yeah, it was Judge Ali here in Washington, D.C., who essentially ordered the president to spend $2 billion, or his administration to spend $2 billion on foreign nationals. Because he said the president can't restrict it or even pause it, including money for the United Nations. And it was a hijacking of presidential power in a way I've never really seen before. I can't believe a judge, a federal judge, I know they're leftists and such, but you think they got enough understanding of the way our Constitution works and the separation of powers work to not to dare to do this, but, all bets are off when it comes to Trump. So he was forcing Trump to spend $2 billion on corrupt foreign operations like the United Nations. And the president went to the Supreme Court and said, you got to stop this. This money goes out the door, we'll never get it again. And the Supreme Court, in a 5-4 decision, said, no, we're going to leave it in place. And it was a terrible decision in my view, or at least the result was terrible, because the majority really didn't explain itself. It was incoherent. And who was in the majority? Disappointingly, to put it charitably and mildly, Chief Justice Roberts and Justice Amy Coney Barrett. And Justice Alito and the other justices, Justice Gorsuch, Justice Kavanaugh, and Justice Thomas, dissented. And Alito wrote quite a powerful dissent. And I think it's worth sharing with you. You can read the full opinion. It's only a few pages online. We'll provide a link to it at the Supreme Court website. And Justice Alito really ripped into the majority and really highlighted the threat to our constitutional republic caused by these rogue left-wing activist judges. Now, Judge Ali is the lower court judge who ordered President Trump to spend money. Basically, he's not only taking over the executive branch function of spending money, but also foreign policy, because this is money that impacts foreign policy. The president's commander-in-chief, he's the guy who represents us on foreign policy. And this is the lead of Justice Alito's dissent, a powerful dissent. Does a single district court judge, a district court judge is a federal court judge at the basic level, who likely lacks jurisdiction, have the unchecked, let me start over again. Does a single district court judge who likely lacks jurisdiction have the unchecked power to compel the government of the United States to pay out and probably lose forever $2 billion, $2 billion taxpayer dollars? The answer to that question should be an emphatic no, but a majority of this court apparently thinks otherwise. I am stunned. And later, and I encourage you to read the full thing, because they couldn't even be under the law. They weren't even supposed to be before this judge. They were literally in the wrong court. It's essentially a contract dispute. You owe us money, we want it. How is that resolved in any court of law? By forcing a party who objects to pay the money immediately. But that's what happened. Money to foreign entities. There's something else I wanted to read here. And he talks about what the administration, Judge Alito wrote, about what the administration was forced to do when faced with this hijacking of its core constitutional powers by this rogue judge. With nowhere else to turn and the deadline fast approaching, this is on page 3, the government asked this court to intervene. At the last moment, the Chief Justice issued an administrative stay. And I talked about that yesterday. It was last week. There was a pause to this ruling initially. Unfortunately, a majority has now undone that stay. As a result, the government must apparently pay the $2 billion post haste, not because the law requires it, but simply because a district court so ordered. As the nation's highest court, we have a duty to ensure that the power entrusted to federal judges by the Constitution is not abused. Today, the court fails to carry out that responsibility. And he concludes as follows. And he goes through the various reasons under, and you should read it because I encourage you to read the Alito dissent because it describes the processes by which the left are challenging Trump's executive orders and how the law is supposed to, and the process under law that's supposed to take place in order for those challenges to succeed. So when you see, well, so-and-so sued and a court issued an injunction or a TRO or whatever the nature of it, Justice Alito explains what's supposed to be happening and what actually is happening in many of these cases. So by looking at what happened in this case, you have an idea of what's happening in these other cases. And frankly, it all further highlights the audacity of these other judges in their anti-Trump rulings. And Justice Alito closes out. Today, the court makes a most unfortunate misstep that rewards an act of judicial hubris and imposes a $2 billion penalty on American taxpayers. The district court has made plain its frustration with the government, and respondents raised serious concerns about non-payment for completed work. But the relief ordered is quite simply too broad. Let me go to the next page. Too extreme a response. A federal court has many tools to address a party's supposed nonfeasance. Self-aggrandizement of its jurisdiction is not one of them. I would chart a different path than the court does today, so I must respectfully dissent. Aggrandizement, self-aggrandizement by a judge. What that means is the judge was exercising a power he didn't have on a matter over which he had no jurisdiction. That's a pretty serious point from a sitting Supreme Court justice, even if he is in dissent. Now, does this mean that Chief Justice Roberts and Justice Amy Coney Barrett are, in the end, going to approve what happened here? No. I mean, the most charitable interpretation is they don't like to have to make decisions before the record below is complete. But I'm not persuaded that letting someone be forced to spend $2 billion, you're a daylight and a dollar short in terms of the abuse of a lower court judge. So you just can't let it be fully complete because it essentially hands a victory to the other side. I mean, oftentimes when, because Judicial Watch can seek immediate relief sometimes in matters, right? Temporary restraining orders or preliminary injunctions. The challenge with doing that legally is that it requires the court to almost make an immediate ruling on the merits. Now, again, I'm a non-lawyer, so take it for what it's worth, but this is my impression of it. So you can go in there, seek immediate relief, and with the barest debriefing, expect the court to rule for you. And you could lose. And if you lose, even if you pursue the lawsuit further, you're likely to lose again because the court has largely made the decision already. So the mirror of that is They rush into court, ask a court to order a president of the United States or his appointees to spend money abroad. And with zero briefing, practically speaking, and a rush timeline, not only does the district court let it happen, the Supreme Court lets it happen. And so I'm sorry, even if there's the conservative justices, Justice Roberts, Chief Justice Roberts, and Justice Barrett come in later and say, well, that was not the way it was supposed to go. Well, a lot of good that is, because the damage is done. We've lost the $2 billion that shouldn't have been spent. Do you think we're going to be able to claw it back? Of course not. So this was a miscarriage of justice. And it's concerning because a judge hijacked powers or took on powers, stole powers that are not available to him under the Constitution of the United States. Self-government means, consent of the government means we elect the president, we don't elect judges, to make decisions on foreign policy, including money, to make sure it's being spent correctly and not at odds with our interests and not in a fraudulent manner. And the idea that someone can rush into court and prevent that from happening within minutes. But on the other hand, he's winning some and losing some. There's like, I think, 100 lawsuits now against Trump over his reform efforts. A judge just today ruled, you might think it's an obvious decision, but it required weeks of litigation, just ruled that Treasury Department employees of President Trump can access Treasury Department data. That's right, the left was going in there to suggest and asking a court, and in fact, one court even broadly prevented even the Treasury Secretary from accessing Treasury data. They had to back down from that. But this is where we are, where a federal court judge has to say, yes, the president's officials can access agency data at which they work, at the agency at which they work. So he's got to keep on keeping on. And, let's hope we get more judges who state the obvious. Presidents can be president. That's the argument here before the judges, or many of the judges. Can the president be president? Can President Trump be president? Meaning exercise the powers and responsibilities and obligations, duties of his power related to his powers under the Constitution, Article 2. The chief executive, the power of the chief executive function resides with the President of the United States, not the judiciary. Now, does it mean he's not subject to the checks and balances of the Article 3 courts and Congress? Of course not. But here you have people coming in and trying to stop something in a way that's outside the law. And it's a threat to our republic. It's a threat to our self-government because it requires judges to come in and substitute their will, their sheer political will, and exercise a raw judicial power and take away our right to self-government. So we'll keep on watching that. We'll intervene where we can, monitor what's happening. We've got our FOIA operations up and running in ways that we've never done before, just to track everything that's been going on, especially the left's attempts to thwart the rule of law. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and like our video down below.